Welcome, folks, to the Big Dudes in the Trenches podcast. I know we literally just came back into existence and instantly Tugas couldn't be here. That's just how it goes sometimes.
Oh, it's awesome. Gotta love the
This is-
weather up in South Dakota, man.
I can't really blame this one on him, but I want to, so it's his fault.
It's 100% his fault. What do you mean you can't blame it on him?
I mean, true. We have the power to do so, and we are doing that right now. So that's cool. So last episode, we were talking all about the XFL, running down week one of the games and stuff. And that's all cool and good, but I don't give a shit. I am here for draft coverage. I'm kidding. The XFL's fun, but draft coverage is my bread and butter. And I couldn't restart the show without dedicating entire episodes at a time to talk about the draft. Not necessarily from an NFL perspective. Here's the thing, more from a college football perspective, as in we'll be going over prospects in conference order. Really how they performed in college approach to this, as opposed to necessarily team needs, trying to build out some big boards by this guy projects really well in this scheme fit in the NFL. How do they actually perform in college? And I think that's a little bit of a different angle than some of the guys you're going to be listening to. Big names like, Mad Mel and Todd McShit. So I called him out right now. Let's go. Let's fucking go. Bring it on. You want to come on the show, defend yourself? Feel free.
We're going to shame you to coming onto our show, which I fully approve of, by the way.
So, of course, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft. It's the biggest draft of all drafts. No other draft in any league is hyped like the NFL draft is, for pretty good reason, too, actually. It's one of the only drafts where rookies can make an instant impact for your team in a big way. And we don't really see that in too many other sports. So we'll be doing mock drafts. What are you thinking over there?
I mean,
you get the one-offs like LeBron or something, but
hockey.
There's like one of those
consistent.
guys.
Like
hockey
every
dudes
year,
get
there's about 4
drafted
guys
and instantly get thrown in the AHL for 3 years. That
if you
is
get drafted,
not-
I think here's a better thing you could say, because the MLB draft is its own fucking monster.
Right.
Hockey, if you're not drafted in the first round, you're probably like your chance of making the NHL goes down significantly. The further back,
True.
just in the first round you're drafted, forget the rest of the rounds. There's only 2 rounds in the NBA draft, and you're right. You have a LeBron that makes an instant impact every now and then. Yeah, but maybe the first 5 to 10 picks that are going to be instant players, maybe.
Right. Called, you're either a lottery pick or you're a draft and stash. So,
but the NFL draft, I mean, we consistently see guys drafted in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round that are starters and
really dang good at it too. I mean, look at Tariq Woolen last year had the argument to be the best corner in the entire draft. There were 2 taken in the top 5. He was taken in the 5th round. So there's great talent all over the place, and football is very fun. So we get to talk about it more with the draft process. It's great. It's a good time. So we will be doing a couple of mock drafts this year. Today will be a pre-combine mock draft, and then we will do kind of a midpoint mock draft between this one and the actual draft. The week before the draft starts will be our final mock draft live on air. So if you want to tune in for those, highly recommend it. Come check us out live right now on Twitch at Big Dudes in the Trenches. Also on YouTube under that name as well. But you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts as BDT Football. So we will talk a little bit about kind of the vibe of the class, the positions that are really strong before we get into the mock. But before we even get there, a whole different league had their own college draft yesterday, which was interesting for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why the XFL, again, just seeing what the USFL had done last year with their draft, decided, hey, we're going to do ours with no fanfare either and just do it on social media. I mean, that'd have been a simple, hey, this is how we're going to do it. This will be a great opportunity. And then the USFL turned around, did the same thing again with their rookie draft this year. Now, I will say the interesting thing for both of these leagues going forward, the XFL, I hope will do something like this next year and maybe get a little fanfare into it. You got a team in Vegas. Vegas was a great NFL draft site. Just saying. Right. But there's a couple ways to look at it, right? Certainly, I think there were players drafted in this USFL draft, and I'll pull up the first 2 rounds here. Now that we're talking about it anyway, there were players that were taken that probably would get drafted in the NFL draft. On the other hand, there are guys that probably don't have a shot of getting taken in the NFL draft, and playing in the USFL in the spring does not preclude them from joining a team in the fall, going to training camps, mini camps, rookie camps, all that fun stuff that you got to do to get ready for the NFL season and still being in very good shape going into the regular season.
I will say it does kind of preclude you from going to rookie camp, which does kind of fall in the USFL season to an extent. So it would be really difficult for these guys to do both this year. But we've seen 2 players already come out and say they're signing with the USFL. Actually, the Michigan Panthers' first 2 picks here. So that's pretty cool. And just a little bit about what you were talking about, the rules of this draft. You can definitely be selected here and still be picked in the NFL draft. Then you can choose which one you want to take, right? So this is not necessarily just a draft for this season. This is a draft. If this player ever plays in the USFL, you have that player's rights. I think that's a really interesting way to do it, and it gets the USFL brand out there right at the start of draft hype season. That's kind of good marketing that the XFL is not doing yet again.
I mean, the XFL is playing games, which I think is as good a marketing, if not better. It's too kind of like we were talking about with just what we saw unfold in the XFL games. There's just 2 different schools of thought between the leagues, and we definitely see it play out. Different schools of thought between how some of these teams drafted as well.
Definitely,
Jarrett, number 1 overall, Jarrett Horst. I mean, he said he's going to play in the USFL, but that dude was looking like he was an NFL prospect.
To some extent, not like high on anybody's board, I'll say. But yeah, there's definitely potential there. A bunch of these guys I thought could have been selected in the NFL draft. Mason Brooks is a big example of that. I love that guy. Former Western Kentucky player, out at Ole Miss now. I mean, Tyler Scott is a really fast receiver. I will be shocked if he doesn't get drafted off of his 4.2 something at the combine alone. Tanner Morgan, yeah, probably not really going to get an NFL shot. Lindsey Scott Jr., potentially in a UDFA conversation just because of the insane numbers he was able to put up. Chase Bryce, maybe that same kind of a deal. So you have a real weird combination of you're drafting for guys you hope you can bring on this season, but also, if they don't make it through NFL camp, they come back to your USFL team instead of just being the free agent pool. So I love a lot of these players actually at the top of this draft anyway. I'll be honest, bottom of the draft, there's some dudes they're pulling out nobody's ever heard of.
and I think that's where a lot of people, myself included, thought most of this draft was going to be. It was going to look like these later rounds. Right. But the top of the draft, there's a decent amount of people. Lindsey Scott is the one that sticks out the most to me, Lindsey Scott Jr., that he's put up video game numbers all through his career. No matter where he's been at. So doing something like
for
that.
LSU, but he was also like 5th string. So
yeah. doing something like that in the USFL is only going to increase his draft stock for the
Right.
NFL,
Right.
or which I guess at that point it'd be UDFA time anyway. But for Lindsey Scott Jr., if I'm him, I'm sitting here like, okay, yeah, let me see if I can get some playing time, get some reps against better competition again, light it up again. Somebody will come calling for him.
I certainly hope so. I love that guy. But like Malik Ham, if you've been watching our show for a while, you'll remember that name from a prospect preview that I did in the season. Malik Ham's incredible. Quentin Barrow out of Grand Valley State, huge guy, has the frame for the NFL. He's probably going to get drafted off of that alone, to be honest with you. Justin Ford is a fantastic corner out of Montana. Isaiah Bolden as well out of Jackson State. These are really great players that just for a couple of reasons, either the talent level around them and their competition level, or they were missing a physical tool. They're not as high on draft boards for the NFL. This is a great opportunity for them to keep building that resume and just keep playing football.
Well, I can tell you what Adrian Martinez's issue was.
There's multiple issues with Adrian
Martinez. It was mostly Scott Frost, though. He was great at Kansas State. So maybe he's kind of in a similar boat as Lindsey Scott, I would say.
I mean, he was great at Kansas State until he got hurt. And then now he's like a little bit of an injury concern too. So
he needs this.
A couple things to balance there.
Let's move on to rounds 3 and 4. Any names that really stuck out to you here of guys we should keep an eye on?
I am a University of Louisville alum.
I knew that's where you're going.
Malik Cunningham he's very much in the Luis Perez mold. He's going to drive you insane, but a couple of times a game, he's going to dot something up and going to be really fun. I really love Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina too. That's a huge name for me here, actually. I think he is incredible.
Derice Davis is one that sticks out to me. That wide receiver room for TCU was incredible this past season. Obviously, he's not the top guy, right? I think the USFL GMs were at least smart enough to realize we're not getting top guys here. But I think that's a great
pickup. You could have drafted Bryce Young. Just shoot your shot.
No, I mean, might as well, right? You never know.
Didn't John Elway get selected by the USFL? So just
I mean, it happened. It happened. I will say, I understand where they're coming from too, keeping the draft order the same. I was a little surprised that there wasn't a snake, just because there's no guarantee these guys will ever play for any of these teams.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have had a season already, and so just put them in
and Michigan was order. The fucking worst. So.
They were so bad. You may have noticed, though, New Jersey Generals did not have a first-round pick, which that happened because of a roster move violation in the offseason. And so their pick got moved from the first round all the way down to the 10th round, which, oof. Wild. But also they just won a championship, so who cares, I guess.
Keep moving it right along to rounds 5 and 6 here.
A couple of names that I really expected would be more NFL draft than USFL draft, even down here. So it's kind of a balancing act, I think, between, again, trying to get guys who you can play this year versus guys you're hoping will eventually come join your team. Like Isaiah Land has to be drafted in the NFL. Come on. Jose Ramirez out of EMU is one of my favorite edge rushers in this class, which, I mean, he's probably going to be a very late day 3 kind of a guy, but still, I fall in love with those kind of guys all the time. That's just me. Dante Stills is another one of those type of players where I fell in love for some reason, and I do expect he will get an NFL shot. So there is a balancing act, like Dejon Warren, even cornerback out of Jackson State. He's a great player. You're hoping that maybe he gets drafted and just not to the right scheme fit, not to the right culture fit, gets dropped. Let's go to the USFL for a season. Why not? Kind of a deal.
I will say it's very interesting. This is the second corner taken from Jackson State in this draft.
Right.
So
and I think the better one went second. So it's a little bit of that balancing act.
And I'll say too, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this affects Colorado's draft prospects for defensive backs in the upcoming years as well.
I mean, they have the number one corner from previous year. They have the number one corner from this signing class.
They have the number one corner from the 80s. So, I mean.
Right. Right. Number one Falcon in history.
Yeah, he kind of it was challenged a little bit by a couple quarterbacks, but one of them went to Green Bay and the other one did some illegal shit. So
yeah, one of them's got that dog in him.
All right, 7 and 8. Whew, God, we're gonna leave that one alone here.
I'm looking at Pittsburgh here. The Maulers, first of all, changed their colors to black and yellow,
as all Pittsburgh teams do.
Pittsburgh move right there. But they pair up Taylor Grimes with his college quarterback. And this was Grimes' best season. This was Lindsey Scott's best season. Makes a ton of sense to me. I don't really think Taylor Grimes is going to get a lot of NFL opportunity out the gate. So he's probably a guy going to start for you like this year because he is pretty good, just not on NFL radars for whatever reason. Same with like Trey Shropshire
out of UAB.
Yeah, the fun name to pronounce there. And then a couple of bigger names, in my opinion. I don't know if they're actually bigger names around like non-college football freaks, but Grant DuBose, Jake Bobo, Adam Korsak's probably the best punter in the class this year for the NFL, even. So to see him going in the USFL draft, special teams works in mysterious ways. Anything could happen. I would bet Adam Korsak's playing the NFL.
Especially if he does well in the USFL. I don't see any NFL team drafting him. I don't see any NFL team drafting a punter in general.
It happens basically every season. So there's two really in this draft class, Adam Korsak and Michael Turk out of Oklahoma, who are kind of in that draftable range. Some people like Turk better. I happen to like Korsak better, but maybe that's a Big Ten bias. I don't know.
I guess Rutgers is technically in the Big Ten, even if nobody wants to count them.
Hey, so's Jake Bobo in a couple of years.
Moving right along. We'll get into the last couple rounds here. Round 9 and 10. Chim Okafor, that name just stuck out to me.
I know. There's been an Okorafor around football for a long time. And I think you're thinking of Chuck or Chuk, who's on the Steelers right now. I think this is his younger brother. I think.
Oh, my goodness. There's so many.
But Okorafor is a name we've seen before at offensive line positions as well. So that's fun. You want to pronounce the Illinois guy? I know you know how. You got to.
Pazaliski.
It's pretty close. I'll give it to you. And we saw a Southern Illinois player get selected as well. Shouting out your boys there.
Antonio Fletcher Memphis too.
To Memphis, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. You got to see. We don't have it. There is a graphic that Fox put out tracking every school that had a player drafted, and not seeing Memphis on there was a little interesting, but seeing SIU on there was very nice. I can't really pinpoint anybody that I would think from Memphis that would be drafted to the USFL and not the NFL. But that kind of goes into a portal and experience discussion as well. This is not a Memphis podcast, but they are kind of a
Quindell Johnson's on the line, honestly. I could see.
Yeah, I think the injury he took this year probably puts him on the line. If he had played a full season, I would say he's an NFL guy for sure. But more of my point, and I think Memphis, because I look at them the most, and you're looking at, Big Ten, where all these guys are really going to. If you're a good player in a Group of 5 school, you're more than likely not graduating there unless you are just devoted to that program.
Right.
And so that's,
or if you graduate in 3 years.
That too. So that's the state of college football right now. Is it a good thing or bad thing? Good question. We'll find out, right?
Another name I do want to shout out before we move on here, though, B.J. Thompson out of Stephen F. Austin, another beast of a dude. And Stephen F. Austin had a really great season with a couple of really exciting players. I hope we see a couple of them go in the NFL draft. B.J. Thompson, probably not one of them, but I do like that guy too. Going to Birmingham. So that's the only team that got any love last year in the USFL since everybody played in Birmingham. So maybe starting a little fan club there would be cool. Actually, Starling Thomas too. Staying with the Stallions. I like Starling Thomas, another guy out of UAB. It's cool to see some of these guys. There's every single season I end up falling in love with guys who probably don't even get picked up UDFA. And so being able to see them get drafted somewhere still feels cool. Gotta be honest.
Even if it is just USFL. I mean, come on. It's the USFL. It's still awesome.
Yeah. It's it's something. No, I'm not going to be mean to the USFL.